Personally, I would say, hey, listen, you almost have a 7-minute lead. If you don't do anything stupid, this race is yours. You've won 4 stages already. You don't need to win a 5th or a 6th. Think about the team, right? Think about your teammates, and just, this is obviously, in my opinion, great news for everybody else who wants to go for stage wins. I think the mountain stages could be very open, and breakaways might actually make it. So that's good news. So it's going to be great racing.
Hello and welcome to the Move podcast. We are looking at the second week and one of the biggest leads we've seen in decades after 2 weeks of the Giro d'Italia. We're going to jump into that in a second. I'm JB Hager, and I'm more importantly joined by George Hincapie, fresh off of racing his legs a little bit in Bentonville over the weekend. We'll see how that went. And Johan Bernil, who's going to break down this Giro for you. So far, George and Johan have pretty much nailed their podium picks to a T. You've described exactly how this race was going to go down. And after 2 weeks of racing, it's exactly as you guys have described. It's the Pogacar show. And then you said Geraint Thomas would be up there as the boss that he's always been. And then Danny Martinez, up and coming star. So that's what's been shaking. But before we get into all of that, let's check in real quick with a couple of our partners. Today's show is brought to you by Bicycle, Buycycle. Whether you're in the market to buy a bike or sell a bike, which is probably pretty much anyone listening to this show, right? This is your place to do it. Over 20,000 road, gravel, and mountain bikes to choose from. This is very interesting. You are 40% more likely to sell a bike right now in the month of May than any other time in the season. So if you've been wanting to upgrade, you've got 1 or 2 or maybe even more bikes in your garage that are just ready to go to someone else, and you can get the bike you've always wanted, reach out to Bicycle and just get the process going. You sell your bike, and then you can pick out what you want right there from their site. Use the code WEDUGIRO, WEDUGIRO at checkout, and that will get you up to $100 off your new bike. Again, we do Giro at checkout, $100 off, bicycle.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Caldera Lab. It is really funny about how addicted to this stuff we all are. None of us on the show, a bunch of dudes, were using any sort of skincare product at all. Then we got introduced to our new friends at Caldera Lab. We're all addicted to it. It's not uncommon for us to go, hey, do you have any of what's it called? The I'm Good from Caldera Labs. That's the serum that I put on at night. We're all like borrowing from each other. It's called The Good. That's what it is. The Good. All their products are great. They will help you look younger, look better. People are going to notice. They have noticed. I know I'm not the best looking guy, but people have noticed just because I'm taking better care of myself with Caldera Labs. You can get 20% off with the code WEDO at calderalab.com, CALDERALAB, calderalab.com. Again, 20% off with the code WEDO. Okay, George, I am curious to hear how your Rule of 3 event went before we jump into this Giro analysis. You and Lance were out there in Bentonville, which I need to spend some time in Bentonville. This is now, for our listeners who've not been there, this is like the new cycling mecca of the U.S. Everything you could ever imagine. How did it go this weekend?
Yeah, like you said, it's a cycling mecca. It's like a utopia of biking. Everybody's on bikes, kids, families, older people, younger people, bike paths all over the place, mountain bike trails everywhere. And just the Rule of 3 event was super fun. I mean, it was 7 hours on the bike, single track trails, gravel, road bike, pretty much everything they could throw at you, they did. And we enjoyed it. It was my son and I and my buddy Brad Cobb were on the same team. And we got to ride with Lance and the Melojani team as well for a little bit. And it was just a really cool vibe, fun event. Like I said, a long day on the bike. I'm still very sore all over the place. I'm not used to riding that long, but I enjoyed it for sure.
Very cool. And Johan, any cycling updates from the Brunel family? You know, your son's been racing, and our listeners have noticed Johan is getting lean. So give us the update from your house.
No, here in the Brunel family, no races this weekend. There was a race planned, but it got canceled last moment. Plus, my son had a little bit of a cold, so yeah. And I've just been riding my mountain bike for a lot of hours.
It shows. Our listeners have noticed.
Long hours, 6 hours sometimes. So
wow.
Yeah, but it's going well.
Nice. All right, let's jump into this. As I said at the beginning, you guys you predicted exactly how this Giro was going to play out. No surprises really whatsoever. So let's just do kind of we'll start with you, Johan, kind of a quick overview of what's taken place since we did our week one recap. And the big developments. You know,
we had obviously already Pogacar in pink. And he had shown already that he was going to be the dominant rider of this Giro. I think week 2 has only enforced that. You know, with especially with another strong performance in the time trial of him, and then of course yesterday's stage, which was basically I think one of the strongest performances ever seen from Pogacar. But a part of that, I think we've seen interesting things, breakaways that made it to the finish, 2 of them, and then. You know, the sprints, Jonathan Milan really portraying him as being the dominant sprinter. 3 stage wins now with a very strong Lidl Trek team around him. Definitely the biggest favorite for the Ciclamino jersey, the points jersey in the Giro. So we'll get all of that in detail now in a bit.
Okay. And then what is this Pogacar lead at the moment after 2 weeks? And as I said at the beginning, George, you have a stat. It hasn't been this much of a lead after 2 weeks. And how long?
Yeah, I think it's 6 minutes and 35 seconds, something like that. And that's the biggest
641.
lead.
641.
641 is the biggest lead that Giro has seen since 70 years. Since Eddy Merckx, apparently, Johan, is that what you said?
I don't think earlier? It's 70. I don't think it's 70 years, George.
Okay.
I think Merckx's his biggest lead was in 1972. So, but since then, I think the biggest lead. It's the biggest lead after 2 weeks. So basically, I think Gianni Bugno in 91 won the Giro, leading from start to finish, and I think at the end he had something like 8 or 9 minutes on the second rider. But you know, seeing how Pogacar is riding this, that's definitely possible. But after 2 weeks, it is the biggest lead since Eddy Merckx win in 1972. So it's been a while.
Yeah, and he just continues to impress. I mean, obviously, we know how good he is as a climber. His time trialing is getting better. I mean, Johan has all the stats on how much he's actually improving power-wise. But I think for his competition, there's just no weaknesses. He can do a full-on lead-out in a mass sprint if he wants to. In fact, we've seen him there in the first 4 or 5 guys, which is a very, very tough task for a climber to do that. So I can just imagine the competition is going, how there's no nicks in this armor. There's nothing we could do to actually, beat this guy. So we just got to race for second and third as best as we can. I feel like that's the current vibe of the peloton right now.
I think it is. I've seen a lot of people questioning the tactics of other teams, but what are you going to do? If you have a rider that's so dominant, there is really no possibility of beating him unless he kind of gets really greedy and wants to put on another show. And basically, like yesterday, for example, he attacked with 15 or 16 kilometers out. So you could say, well, that's it. Unless, when he gets to altitude, he all of a sudden cracks and loses time. But I think a rider like him in that kind of shape, it's highly unlikely that he gets a bad moment. Now, especially with a difference like an advantage like this, you can manage it. Even if he has a bad day, he's still going to win the Giro.
And the shocking thing, I guess, or unexpected thing is their director's post-race interview is just like, I think they asked him, why did you go so early? Second last climb. Obviously he wants to win the stage, but the director said he's just riding his pace. Like he's still not going, in the red zone, so to speak, but he's riding his pace that he knows he can hold for, that amount of time, which is pretty amazing.
I think, George, I mean, you're right. I mean, yesterday it looked extremely controlled, except the last kilometer. The last kilometer, he was hurting because it was at altitude and it was extremely steep. I mean, this is another thing we only see at the Giro, right? Like 2 months ago, this road did not exist. They just put that road there on a ski slope, the last kilometer. And I read somewhere it was 19-20%, certain sections of that last kilometer. There, I think it's the first time we could see some grimacing on Pogacar's face. I mean, who wouldn't, right? After it was also almost 6,000 meters of climbing yesterday. The last 15-20 minutes were above 2,000 meters, so it's kind of logical that he was suffering. But yeah, I mean, it must. And I saw a quote of Geraint Thomas in his podcast saying, "Yeah, we're being questioned about why we don't make the race hard, but." He says, it's just impossible to follow him. He compared. It was a really good analogy.
Oh, I got this too. This was good. He compared it to running. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said, just imagine you do a 30-minute run, and your 10-kilometer run, and that your time is 40 minutes on 10 kilometers, and you just go with a guy who has a much faster time, and you go with him for the next for 20 minutes, and now you have to do another 20 minutes at that pace. You're going to blow up and you're going to end up with 45 minutes instead of 40 minutes. So I think that's the mindset that, and it's only logical. It's only logical. We've seen as one person, one rider who tried to follow Pogacar on stage 2, right? It was Ben O'Connor.
Yeah. And perhaps he's just out of the podium because of that mistake.
Yeah.
And he actually said he's not going to make that mistake again.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's talk about, guys, how the dynamics of this race changed after this gap. This almost 7 minutes, because it would be a very different race if Pogacar did not have the Tour de France on his schedule. He could just continue to beat up on everybody. But now, in theory, although you never know with Pogacar, in theory, he goes into control mode, conservative mode, save as much energy as possible for the Tour de France, right? But so how will the dynamics of racing change now with this big lead, or technically, historically, how would it have changed?
We don't know, right? We don't know what's in his mind. Personally, I would say, hey, listen, you almost have a 7-minute lead. If you don't do anything stupid, this race is yours. You've won 4 stages already. You don't need to win a 5th or a 6th. Think about the team, right? Think about your teammates, and this is obviously, in my opinion, great news for everybody else who wants to go for stage wins. I think the mountain stages could be very open, and breakaways might actually make it. So that's good news. It's going to be great racing. And yeah, I mean, I think Pogacar definitely should, from now on, already say, hey, I need to save everything for the Tour. I'm going to be the big favorite. My team is going to be under a lot of pressure, and I'll need every single bit of energy in July that I can save now. That would be logical. But this young generation, they just race. Whenever they have numbers on, they race.
They race, and like any Grand Tour in the final week, we're going to start seeing guys that are an hour down, 40 minutes down. Good guys that maybe had a bad first week, that all of a sudden they start getting in breakaways. So we have teams that haven't won stages yet, so they're going to have to keep racing to try to win stages. We have teams that want to keep their top 10 spot. So a whole bunch of different dynamics start coming into play, where the racing for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th become important and have a large factor in how this next week will play out in terms of the racing. I mean, UAE really doesn't, all they have to do is protect the 7-minute lead. So they can just ride their pace, let 20, 30, 40 guys go away, get 30 minutes in the breakaway. That's what we would do. We probably wouldn't care. But then the people that are about to lose their 4th spot or their 5th spot in the overall, they start getting a little nervous. So we're going to see different teams start having a lead, put some control up in the race, I think, in this final week.
Yeah, well, we've seen it already. It's in one of the stages, for example, there was, I mean, Tiberi was, his team was, Bahrain was riding for the white jersey. because there was one rider in front who was a threat for him. That's going to be an interesting battle between Arensman and Tiberi. I think it's a few seconds only now. And both of those riders are in great shape. To me, it looks like Arensman is on the up and Tiberi is kind of stagnating. So that's going to be a really interesting battle for the white jersey for fifth place also, I would say, because I think they're fifth and sixth right now, these guys. And yeah, I mean, the typical, I mean, the podium is still open. You know, it's Geraint, it's Dani Martinez and Ben O'Connor. Those three guys have a realistic chance to be on the podium. They're just waiting, you know, if somebody has a bad day, maybe of those three guys, but they're really tight. We saw that yesterday. They were really, really close. I mean, to me, the fact that Geraint Thomas is still there, super solid, really knowing how he has to race is nice to see. It's the contrast, right, of this young wolf, Pogacar, and then the more experienced, patient rider that Geraint is, and the fact that he is, after so many years, still able to be up there, real podium contender. You know, we have to be honest, he can't win the Giro, not this Giro at least. But I mean, hats off to him to be, you know, once again, the solid rider he is, and I mean, he does not disappoint.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's such a baller. He can do his podcast laying down, which is what I love. I think that's part of the trademark. You know, that I have not seen many podcasts that Geraint Thomas does where he's not on the massage table. I know. I love it. What were you going to say, George? I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, it's just obviously a little bit different situation than last year where he was leading the Giro and, you know, very tight with Roglic. You know, this perhaps is not as much excitement between first and second, but I think the battle between second and third and fourth, for that matter, is going to be really exciting. You know, like I mentioned in our pre-show before the race started, we got to ride a bit with Dani Martinez in Medellin, and what a great guy. The team let him stay home in Medellin and just train for the Giro. Like, basically, he didn't even have to race. So imagine just being able to be at home, have your nutrition, your trainer, everything dialed in. And look, it's paying off. The guy is right there. Yes, Geraint put 30 seconds on him in the time trial, this second time trial, but on the climbs, they're essentially the same right now. So it's just going to be a matter of who's going to be the freshest in this final week. But it's going to be a good battle.
Today's show is also brought to you by HVMN. Now, we've been using their Ketone IQ for several years now because we've started reading about it, hearing about it. The Peloton is using it. You know, there are deals with teams with Ketone IQ. It is definitely something you want to add to your lineup. It will make you feel better. It gives you more energy. It gives you more, in particular, more clarity. I think it's just really helped with my mental health quite a bit. So you can get 30% off of your first subscription. And that's what I recommend doing is just go online, get a subscription, try it for 3 to 6 months. And I guarantee you're going to feel a difference. 30% off on that initial order, Ketone IQ at hvmn.com/themove. Again, visit hvmn.com/themove and subscribe upon checkout for 30% off. And our last partner that I'm excited to tell you about today is our friends at Helix Sleep. This was I know the term game changer gets overused all the time, but this was a game changer at our house. We've been on it for a couple years now. Definitely sleeping better. And prior to that, I don't know, 5 years ago or so, we went into some mattress store, just said, hey, what's the greatest? And spent a fortune on it. This Helix we've been on costs less. It's customized for us. We went on, did the sleep study and picked out the mattress that was right for us. And yes, it's better. So they offer a 100-night trial and a 10 to 15-year warranty to try out your new Helix mattress. Helix is offering 30% off on all mattress orders and 2 free pillows just for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/themove. That's helixsleep.com/themove. I'm sure, Johan, as a director, quite often you had to remind everybody it's a 3-week race, you know, and they're talking about how stomach bugs go around the Peloton. You know, you could get sick and some bad weather on the horizon in this last week.
Yeah, especially after 10, 12 days, the body is depleted, you're empty. You can catch something really easily. I think that's obviously the main concern, in my opinion, for Pogacar. Stay healthy, stay risk-free, as much possible risk-free within the peloton.
Yeah, look how much we learned during COVID about how you behave and to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. They're probably saying you're not going to be mingling with friends and family. Try to stay isolated, right?
Yeah.
No, it is obviously a challenge. We'll see now. I mean, and typically for the Giro, they are predicting some bad weather days to come in the last week. That could also be a factor. I've seen talks that, they took the Stelvio out, but they put another climb in there. But now apparently that's also a problem because it's the same altitude basically. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. That's the stage of tomorrow. So Pogacar doesn't mind. He has his leads, and if they go over it, fine. If they don't go over it, even better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe tomorrow they start on a climb. Johannes, is that correct? Or a very tough start?
They're in Livigno, so wherever they go to, they're going to have to go uphill.
Yeah, so they're all starting at they're not recovering quite as good as they would normally because Livigno's up at altitude. It's potentially bad weather, which at altitude is going to be even 10 times worse, cold probably. And there's still a lot of teams that haven't won stages. So mix all of those factors in together, and it's going to be fireworks at tomorrow's start of the Giro. It's going to be a really fun final week to watch, I think.
Yeah, good. I want to mention, nice to see Quintana back in the running. Obviously, he had a difficult start of the Giro. I think he had an injury after Tour of Catalonia, a small fracture or something. So he had to skip a few races. But man, yesterday that stage at altitude, that's his terrain, and without Pogacar, he wins this stage. So obviously, nice to see him back. He had a rough year last year, and even after being out for a whole year, he's still able to perform at a very high level. So that was good to see.
I agree. And like you said, Johan, he's been out for a while. He just started racing again in February at the Tour of Colombia, or even when was that, January? And he's had some ups and downs. But like you said, if it wasn't for Pogacar, he would have won that stage. And I think for his confidence, that's a huge morale booster. And I can imagine him getting in many more breakaways in this final week and trying to get a stage win.
I want to mention another rider that talk about comebacks. We'll get to that in 1 second, because I do want to check in with a couple more of our partners who have some special offers for you. Another rider it was really great to see bouncing back, on a comeback is Alaphilippe. That was just how great to see it. Like, it just the emotion, the energy, the happiness, he's had a rough go. So that's, if you haven't been watching the Giro this week, seeing Alaphilippe and Quintana, it's like, wow, this is great. This is two of our favorite stars of the last decade.
Yeah, and you could tell his form was good. That breakaway he got in last week was no panic cooking breakaway. That was a very hard breakaway to get into. It was only strong riders, and he was right there till the end and just lost in the sprint. And I'm sure that was very tough for him emotionally to deal with that after being in the breakaway for, over 100 kilometers that day. But you saw he had the legs. He made another breakaway a few days later, had a bad day. We don't even know what happened to him. But that guy's got just a lot of class, and he's not a quitter, and it's great to see him back at the top of his game.
Yeah, now also is in the select group of very few riders who win stages in all three Grand Tours. I think that's nice. But it was also very nice to see he was away with this Italian rider from Polti-Cometa, and the interaction between both of them after the finish. He went to Alaphilippe went to find him, thank him for the collaboration, and this I think it's Maestri is Maestri, the Italian rider, was extremely happy that one of his childhood idols, He probably had a poster of Alaphilippe on the wall. He was so honored to be able to be in the breakaway with him. And then the day after, I don't know if you saw the images, George, Alaphilippe brought a pizza box to the bus of Poltrico Meta with his jersey of the day before to thank him for the collaboration. So that was a really good story.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, that's a testament of the respect that Alaphilippe has in the peloton. A guy like Mietri, how do you say his name? I'm not sure. Maestri. Without him, without a doubt, Alaphilippe does not win that stage. I mean, they were a minute and a half ahead of a very, very strong breakaway behind them. So he went all in. You could see they were even conversing throughout the stage, like, man, I'm giving you all I got, knowing most likely that he was going to get dropped. I mean, but he was just so honored to be in a breakaway with Alaphilippe, and obviously getting tons of TV time for his team. It's just a cool story to see. That two guys collaborating like that, and you saw all the how happy, like you said, Johan, Alaphilippe was at the finish line. Because without him, he was not winning that stage. So it was a great, exciting stage to watch.
And also a little detail. Patrick Lefevre acknowledged that Alaphilippe proved him wrong. He was very.
I did not see that.
Yes, he did. He did communicate that in the media. So we all know that Patrick was critical of Alaphilippe and of his performances of the last year. But he did say that he proved him wrong, and they're actually now even considering. They're talking for an extension of his contract. So whether he's gonna stay or not is a different story. But it's nice to see that when a rider like that can bounce back and prove critics wrong, and on top of that, if the critics then acknowledge that they were wrong, I think that's nice to see.
But think about that, Johan. I think we should talk about it a little bit more. You don't really see that often, where somebody like Alaphilippe is not going to wait for a breakaway of 20 guys that are just behind him and go all in with one guy. I mean, clearly he had this in his mind that short, small roads, windy, up and down all day. He decided to not have to deal with the chaos of having to figure out what these 20 guys are going to race against him, with them. It's better to just focus on one, go all in. And, at one point, there's no return, because if you're doing all that work with one guy, if you get caught, your race is over. So it's just interesting how that whole breakaway worked out.
He was on a mission that day, man. I mean, I think as the breakaway was formed, he said, okay, this is way too big for me. I need to go. Mm-hmm. And let's just, make the best of it. And the fact that he's able to pull it off after already trying 3-4 days in a row, obviously says a lot about his actual form. I think it's nice. I mean, he's somebody who's very liked in the peloton. There was a lot of people after the stage from other teams that went to congratulate him, and that's always super nice to see. Yeah,
and then like we keep mentioning, decathlon's on a roll this year. I mean, they're winning more than they ever have. New names, and this kid, I'm going to butcher the name, Tadej. Was able to be in a breakaway with one of his idols, Romain Bardet, and
same thing.
I mean, what do you know about him, Johan? Where did he come from?
It's two brothers. So this is Aurélien Paré-Peintre, and so his brother's Valentin. Valentin won a stage last year. They're from the Alps, and I think they've been in the development program of AG2R since very young. Both climbers, extremely skinny. Paré-Peintre, I think he's 52 kilos.
Lightest rider in the Giro, apparently.
Lightest rider in the Giro. Wow, and he was probably away with the second lightest rider in the Giro, because Bardet is not very. There's not much of Romain Bardet either. But same story. He was able to drop his idol, this guy, and he said, it's nice to also now have a trophy of the Giro at the house. That it's not only my brother who has one. It's kind of nice. Nice. I mean, but it speaks to the team. This year they are on a different level. They are in contention for the podium with Ben O'Connor. They just won the 4 days of Dunkirk, which is 6 days. It's still called the 4 days of Dunkirk. Sam Bennett won 4 stages and the overall. And I think, I mean, they must be close to 20 victories already this year. So it's yeah. I mean, it's definitely the best French team right now through the season.
Yeah, and then we saw him a couple of days later doing some important pacing for Ben O'Connor on yesterday's stage. This kid is recovering really well, and we're going to be hearing a lot more from him in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Hey, what was the biggest difference between the two time trials for Filippo Ganna to get the win over Pogacar that you noticed?
Well, I mean, I think that the second time trial was definitely his terrain. It was 31 kilometers. A lot flatter. There's no real flat in Italy, but a lot flatter. I've read somewhere 62 chain rings. Just crazy. Geraint Thomas actually 68 chain ring. They all rode a one by Pogacar and Ganna and Geraint. They're only one chain ring. But yeah, this was his preferred terrain, and actually Ganna went faster in the second part of the time trial than Pogacar. He's obviously also probably focused a lot more in the days before on that time trial. But it was, I think I read somewhere it was 11 months ago since he had won his last victory on the road. So for him to win this time trial after losing it, the first one to Pogacar was a nice revenge. And I mean, Ganna is in the Giro, he's always super strong. I mean, I don't know if you saw yesterday, George, like on top of Mortirolo, there was probably 25 riders left in the main peloton, and Filippo Ganna was still there, and he's
still there,
80 plus kilos.
Oh, yeah. And unfortunately, our buddy Magnus Sheffield, who was on the show with us for the preview of the Giro, he had a bad wreck. He was doing a great time. Potentially could have maybe finished top 5 in that time trial, which was a big goal of his. Top 3. So sadly, he took the wreck. But hey, when you're going for the win, when you're going for the wins in these time trials, you're on the edge of major risk the whole time. Yeah. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed. So hopefully he's recovering and he gets a nice rest day and be able to help out the team in this final week.
Yeah, he'll need the rest day because I saw yesterday he definitely was paying for the consequences of the crash. He went down really, really hard on one side, and even if it's just some skin, but the impact is there. And then
that's the worst. You and I remember being 2 weeks into a grand tour. I mean, the last thing you want to do is crash because obviously recovery becomes a major factor in the final week of the tour. And you just like sticking to the sheets and it's just, you can't sleep well. It's just horrible all the way around.
Yeah.
What do we have left for sprinters, Johan, for this last week?
We have, I've just checked there's potentially 2 sprints. Stage 18 and the last stage into Rome. There's still quite a bit of sprinters here, with I mean, Jonathan Milan obviously is shown to be the best sprinter right now. He still has a full team of 8 riders and they're completely dedicated to him because they have nobody for GC. Caden Groves still has a full team. Tim Merlier has a full team. I think those 3 guys are the fastest guys. And then, we have guys like, for example, we have Gaviria and Caleb Ewan, who doesn't seem that long ago, like 2, 3, 4 years ago, like the fastest guys. And they're not even a factor in the sprints right now. I mean, maybe I have to swallow my words and the Gaviria or Ewan wins a sprint, but because all sprints are different. But it's kind of crazy how fast this evolution goes, and you have these new guys coming in, and Gaviria was so dominant a few years ago, and now he's trying, he's up there, but for him to win, everything really needs to fall into place, and Caleb Ewan is the same thing.
Yeah, and I see Gaviria. He's kind of floating on his own. Not much help. And the other day, I mean, he did a great sprint, but he went for like 400 meters to go. Yeah. It's hard to hold off guys like Jonathan Milan and these people. But obviously, he's relying on that slight hesitation. If they hesitate for a second, perhaps he makes it. So he's got the fitness.
Yeah, it has worked in the past for him, because Gaviria has won stages like this, like anticipating the sprint, having that little jump.
Yeah.
But yeah, the speed of Milan, he did 72 kilometers per hour the last time he won, George.
Yeah, I think he did a peak of 1900 watts. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, right now, mano a mano, even with Malir, he is the best sprinter, the fastest guy. So there's going to have to be some tactics come into play if those guys want to win one of these final 2 sprint stages.
Yeah, for sure.
And while we're talking sprinters, George, any updates from your friend Mark Cavendish as we getting closer to this year's tour?
I forget the last time we were on, but had he won that stage in Turkey?
I don't think so.
No. So I'm excited to see it. He went to Greece to train with his trainer for a few weeks before that. Just a lot of motivation, a lot of long rides. And he's back. He almost won a stage before that. He went a bit too early.
He won a stage in the Tour of Hungary, I think, right?
Hungary, sorry. You're right, Hungary. He won a stage in Tour of Hungary. But for him, a guy like that, it's just a matter of building that confidence and his confidence in himself and his team. And I think that was a very successful week for him. And he's going to start building from here for his final objective.
Yeah, big difference having a win under his belt this season going into the Tour de France as opposed to not having it.
2 wins.
Yes and no. I'm going to disagree there. Yes and no. Okay, it's wins, but these wins don't mean anything. It's it's in the what was it in? Was it in Colombia or in Colombia Tour and then in Hungary? It's not against the sprinters. The speeds are not the same in the last 10, 20 kilometers. It's nice to win, but it means nothing for the Tour. You can say, okay.
It means nothing for the Tour, but for a rider like Cav that's been there, done pretty much everything you can do in cycling, it means a lot because his building confidence in his team, his lead out train, whether or not they can be with him when he's going to need them in the Tour, and his numbers are good. Yeah. What does Lance always say?
I hope so. I hope so. Listen, 2 years, was it 2 years ago was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Then when he won 4 stages in the Tour, he hadn't won almost anything before the Tour. He was actually not even going to the Tour.
Yeah, he wasn't going until like 10 days before.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So that is not a predictor of how the Tour de France is going to go if you have 2 wins under your belt already.
I think
it makes sense. I
think Cavendish is a really atypical sprinter. He says it himself. Every sprint is different. It's about positioning. He definitely does not have the highest watts. He said himself.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to produce these high watts. He is super efficient in following the wheels. He's aerodynamic, and I think he's the atypical sprinter of the modern cycling. If there's one guy who can do it, it's him.
Yeah.
But the Tour is the Tour, and it's gonna take a lot. Last year he won a stage in the Giro, the last stage, and then he was close to winning one in the Tour. So listen, I hope for him. I'm cheering for him.
It's a good story.
It's going to be exciting. Yeah, for sure.
It's a good storyline. Okay. One more thing here, unless you guys have anything else from this week 2 of the Giro, I do want to tell all of our listeners, you have a chance to win the Ventum NS1. George, you've been doing a good job promoting this, and anyone can sign up to win it. ventumracing.com/the-move. Doesn't cost you anything to sign up. After this Giro, so after the last day, next weekend, we'll give away a brand new Ventum NS1. All right, good luck on that. Anything else, guys? I think we're good.
We'll
be back. That's it. We'll be back next Sunday.
And the gap will be what? 30 minutes from first to second.
I would be surprised if it continues to grow.
Let's part on this. Will we see Pogacar be very calm and manage his gap and conserve energy, or will we see him looking for stage wins and being aggressive on this last week? Which do you think?
George, I'll let you go first.
Logic would say conserve, hold that lead, just try to conserve his team. That's what logic would say, but you never know with him.
Yeah. I'm going to say the same thing.
No.
If I'm his director, It's also, the question is how manageable is he, right? But I would forbid him to attack. There's no way. I mean, why?
No.
Right. Well, it'll be fun to watch. We'll see what happens. All right. Thank you for everyone for tuning in and checking out this week 2 Giro recap. You can always write to us, themove@wedo.team. You can always reply or leave messages on YouTube. We always check all those out. And appreciate you tuning into the show. Thank you, Johan and George.
Thanks, guys. Thanks,
guys. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.